Maybe what we'll do real quick, for the benefit of everybody here, I know Mike's brand new. Mike, you kind of know my shtick, I suppose. Maybe we'll do a little introduction real quick, just a little personal quick thing for Tom and your benefit as much as anything. So I'm, the fire chief, been on the fire department for 40 plus years, and also a town council member, as you know. Bunch of kids, raised them in the community. Been very fortunate when the fire department's fundraising gig used to be, they'd walk around and knock on doors, and the guy walked into the yard when I was renting the property over on Lower Portal back in 1979, knocked on the door, said, or no, I guess I was out in the yard doing something, and he said, "You look like a likely candidate. Come down to the fire department on Monday night." So sure enough, I started that year and been at it ever since. So Tom, I don't know if you want to do a little bio on yourself.
Yeah, no, hi, Tom Yemps. I live over on Belle Plaine Trail, over on the first hole of Long Beach Country Club, down by the old school. I've been a resident of Long Beach since 1999. Raised my 3 children here. 2 are out in the working world, one's still in college. Back in the year 2004, there was a small fire out on the golf course across from my house. About 11 o'clock one night, a fire truck pulled up in front of my house. I was curious, went outside and helped some of the guys and gals pull some hose across the golf course to put out the grass fire. And about 6 months later, Dave Albers, fire chief, called me and said, "Hey, we're getting a training class together. I'd love to get you involved if you have any interest." And so I went down to the fire station, and 17 years later, I'm, very passionate about being a volunteer firefighter. I'm a captain on John's staff, and I'm responsible for the fire scene activities. So my job is to lead the troops into the fires as well. I'm the training captain as well. So I do the most of the Monday night trainings, as well as the prepping new members and getting everybody certified and whatnot. So thrilled to be a part of the fire commission, and again, look forward to working with y'all.
I don't know if Mike and John want to say anything. They're certainly welcome to. I think we all know who you are, but if you want to say anything, that'd be great.
You might go first, John.
I'm on the town council, like John indicated, and have had my home out here at Stop 23 on Lakeshore Drive for the past 50 plus years. Glad to be a part of the fire commission, and hoping for bigger and better things and bigger things, and got a lot of challenges ahead, but I'm sure we can meet them and try to do what's best for our community. So my kids are all grown up and out. They loved it out here when they were young. So still good to be here. I'm glad I'm still around to enjoy it. And then if anybody needs any deer, they just about 15 of them just marched across my yard. So just wondering.
All right, Mike Johnstone, town council, just came on the town council, filling the vacancy that Nick Meyer left. And Lisa and I have been homeowners in Long Beach for 19 years. I'm a retired banker. We were both very fortunate that the fire department saved our house while we were living in Chicago. We had a modem start to melt a wooden table that was on, and fire department responded, and all we were down to was smoke damage. So we got very fortunate on that one. So we truly appreciate that and value the fire department.
Mike, I think I found that modem in your house. I remember going into a house, we were trying to find the smoke smell and smelled burning plastic, and walked into a room and I saw a Comcast modem that was, severely melted.
Yes, we got very, very fortunate. It was sitting on an antique wood table.
Yeah.
And it was a table that was owned by Lisa's aunt, great aunt. And so they had some value, but it was much more important to save our house.
Yeah.
I think it was like $16,000 of smoke damage at the end of the day. which is why you carry insurance.
All right, that's, I think, the introductions for everybody's benefit, so we all know a little bit about each other. What I'm going to do is stop this screen. This is the agenda. I just kind of threw it together so we have a little framework. I'm going to pop up, I think most of you have seen it, but just for kicks, I'll pop up the communication we received from Bill, which was his, I'll call them expenditures outside the contract. I'll pop those up real quick. See, hopefully you guys can see that. Essentially, what we've done here is we talked about this at the last meeting, and the council members were asking about, what other expenditures does the fire department wind up costing the town? And you can see here, there's 3 different insurance coverages. If we have any specific questions, we can get Bill involved. But essentially, there's about 16,000 worth of insurance coverages that the town incurs in terms of expenses. There are also, if there aren't any questions on this, what Bill did here was this past year, we had to do some repairs to the building itself, which again is the way the contract reads currently. That's the responsibility of the town. We had an overhead door go out and we had to replace the motor for that. And then we had a HVAC unit go out and Bill paid that bill. So there's another almost 5,000 this particular year. Those were one-offs rather than recurring expenses. So
one thing, John, I might add that I probably left out, but it's yes, we try to be transparent, is I believe there was a contribution, and I didn't get that vendor in there, that there was also a compressor that we needed to. You got a special deal, but in the end, there was probably another, I can't remember how many thousands of dollars that was, but there was a compressor, which again is one of those things that doesn't happen every year, right?
Right. That thing was originally, I think we had the original one in the station. There was a replacement, I believe, about 15 years ago, and then this one finally went out. Yeah, that's just an air compressor that fires up. The truck brakes are in abeyance with that compressed air, so that when we get ready to pull out, they're ready to go. And then we also use it for maintenance and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Fuel is a tough one. Bill will tell you, what we do is we get the diesel fuel for the trucks at Tom's diesel portable tanks that are out there at the maintenance garage. We don't go through very much fuel. If we fuel that thing up 2 or 3 times a year, that's a big deal. It holds about 30 or 40 gallons. So that's not a significant cost, assuming you did it 4 times a year, or 100 gallons at $6 or something, if it was that expensive. Utilities is another one that's hard to separate. Bill said he pretty much gets I think the meters, all the utility costs must be on the same meters, is what it sounds like, because Bill's only getting one bill. So that's a little tough to itemize. I'm imagining, $2,000 or $3,000, Bill. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I just paid a bill today for what is called the town building, and I think it was about $1,300. So it's probably, that share probably is a couple $100 a month for the fire station. But right. But it appears to be I get separate metered bills for the maintenance building, for the community center and parks and everything else. But so apparently there's one meter that handles all that. So
yeah. So
and usually it's not that big. The 1,300 is a little high because it's still the winter.
Right. And then we don't air condition our whole space. So essentially the summer month bills we'd be very, very, very small part of that. We do have a little air conditioning in the meeting room during our meetings, but other than that. So really, if you look at the fire department insurance and the utilities at 2,500, which is probably a little strong, and even the annual contract at 38, that comes up to about 56,000. And if you round that to about 60,000, that's probably, if assuming we approve the contract amount, it's somewhere around that 38,000. We're at about a $60,000 a year annual, recurring cost, so to speak, for the town. And if you look at our annual budget, we crank about $2 million through the town roughly in overall budget. And, that 60,000 represents about 3% of the town's budget. So my predecessor was fond of bringing pennies and nickels and dimes to the town council meetings and setting them out on a table and making sure everybody understood that we were 3 pennies out of that $1 in the town's budget. So I just wanted you to understand the magnitude of that. That's why we put that up front. If anybody has any questions on those items, otherwise we can move on to the contract itself. Does anybody have any questions?
On the insurance, do we every so often get other quotes just to see if we're all in the ballpark or not?
Bill can probably speak to that. We just moved over to Michiana Insurance. What's that been, Bill? 5 years or something?
It's been 4 or 5 years, yeah. I don't want to comment about disparage anybody else, but we did find out we were paying for earthquake insurance in 2012 and $50,000 deductible, and it excluded masonry, which pretty much we determined that maybe we'd try something else. And so, yeah, and we haven't had any earthquakes. So I think we're still good. But yes, we've had good luck, and the prices have not gone up. I will tell you, when you want to talk about insurance, because you asked John Coker, we had 2 insurance brokers who bid on the job. We had somebody for a couple of years, and then we went over to Michiana. But both those insurance companies one of them said they would not bid with Michiana, said they would not bid unless we had a separate policy for the fire insurance. And because that gives us a separate $4 million liability. And before we were melding the things together. So the insurance is a little more expensive than just having one policy that includes the fire, but there is a merit in, I think, from a fiscal point of view to keep the policy, to make the policy separate. So, I mean, we could probably reduce the cost of the insurance, but then we would lose that second $4 million rider that we have that covers that. And
well, that's the only reason I asked, is just to get a good handle at where get to some different quotes every 2 or 3 years, just to see that we're, not out of the ballpark. Because
yeah, we would need to do that with health insurance. We can stop in the middle of the year. With property and casualty, we can, we are locked in for 2021. We've had very good luck with that. Our insurance the broker is Michiana Insurance, but Liz McKnight is our carrier, and both Pete Byvotes and I like the fact that they were the only one that was recommended by, which was then IACT, which is now AIM, but we could certainly ask for quotes again. But right now, that would be something we need to do for 2022.
yeah, you got to do it ahead of time. I understand that.
Yeah.
So if there are not any other questions relating to that Roman numeral number 1, the outside contract expenditures, we can move into the contract. I know, Mike, you were interested in the escalation clause. The contract that we proposed, the fire department proposed, included a 3% hard number percentage escalation through the duration of the contract. That would be an annual increase. And you proposed, I think, a little more scientific method. And I know John Coker expressed his concern that the way things are going right now, the inflation rate's liable to creep up. So I guess it's hard to think about having your cake and eat it too. If we don't have a hard one in there and we use your formula, then I don't see why. It seems to me like it's counterintuitive or at odds. Those 2 points are at odds. If you're going to have an escalation clause with some science behind it, why would you cap it? I guess that it's.
Well, because you could end up with a 12% inflation rate.
Well, then you should take our 3% offer.
Well, I'd say 3% cap it at 3%.
Well,
yeah, I think one of the things that might mitigate that a little bit is I would recommend that if we're looking at the 5-year inflation rate, it every year to be a rolling 5-year number. And so you just factor in the new one, drop the oldest on that scale, and would mitigate it for some period of time. I share John's concern that whatever we're at a 12% inflation rate, and maybe we write something into the contract that says that we can review this on an annual basis, to be reviewed on an annual basis and just look at the circumstances. But my recommendation would be to use a rolling 5-year inflation rate.
You're interested in reviewing the
Plus 25 days.
the percentage adjustment every year, not the whole contract, right? Well, I mean, we haven't talked about the term.
No, just, yeah, I would say put something, yeah. Right. But I would say that we put that in the escalation clause.
Okay. I'd recommend not getting too complex with it, because somewhere down the road, it's not going to be you and I looking at it. And if we make it too complicated, it's going to be kind of tough. But, you know, if there's an annual review of the thing and it's got some kind of science that makes sense, I suppose that would work. We just threw the 3%.
I think, and using the 5-year inflation rate is really pretty simple to get to. It's not very complicated. And we can also add that into that section saying, how's this thing determined? And I just like tying something to an index rather than just having a flat rate.
Well, that's fine. But I mean, my point about John's cap is, if the inflation's moving around and you guys are concerned that 3% is too high, if indeed inflation does get higher, why wouldn't the fire department enjoy the same science then as it goes up, as it comes down? I don't understand why we should take the risk of all the upside.
Yeah, well, look, not to get too picky, but look what happened over in Illinois with their pension. They got that tied to something, and it's out of control. And
Well, it's a cake and eat it too sort of thing, though, John. If you want science behind it so that you can keep it down and inflation starts to take off and our expenses go up, why wouldn't we be reasonable to ask for the town to have the contract?
taxes could be capped, which is what they are. I mean, we can't just say, okay, let's go to raise our taxes.
It seems to me what Mike has proposed, gives us that flexibility. We're going on an index, and then we've agreed then that we'll review it on an annual basis. So if inflation is, 15%, we can have an educational conversation about, okay, what should it be this year because of, inflation is, so out of whack. I think we're covered there. I would propose getting rid of any cap and just doing what Mike has suggested is, on an index, and we'll review it on an annual basis. It seems straightforward to me. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a deep contract guy, but that seems pretty straightforward. I wouldn't cap it though. As long as you got the 5-year rolling index. So.
Just to keep the 30,000 foot view here, our group will make a recommendation to the town board. So anything that we don't come to agreement on, they're going to have to decide for us. So we don't necessarily have to decide each of these fine points tonight. But, I think we probably beat this horse pretty well. If we want to have I don't know if we want to vote on each of these things as we go through so that we put them behind us and then, wind up with a recommendation after a meeting or two. What's the pleasure of the group?
And John, while this is Chris Willoughby, I think one other thing that might address John Coker's point is no matter what, there's the out clause in there so that if somehow these escalators, right, you're not going to get locked in or tied like you give the Illinois example. I think that there's an out that, there's always going to be that budgetary constraint in there as well. So that if you review that annually, if the town just can't afford it, that's another consideration. So I feel like that's a kind of a stopgap measure and a safety net for the town, because again, it always is driven on the budget.
Would that help you on that one, John? Or
I just look at the things getting out of control and we're ended up giving an 8 or 10% increase to the department, and our employees are getting a 0.5% increase in their salary. I mean,
Well, we could go on with conjecture. We could go on with conjecture all night, John. We kind of have to come down to whether we think we need an escalation clause, number one. Number two, whether we do it scientifically, which I'm in favor of. I think it's a reasonable proposal that Mike's made. I don't know if I want to start going into conjecture all night long. I mean, there's all kinds of scenarios we can cook up. I guess I have to think that if the costs are going up that significantly, then we have to think about it as a town, again, based on affordability. But if all of a sudden, fuel goes up to $6 a gallon, and it's not reasonable to choke off any of the items that the fire department's responsible for purchasing, if the costs are going up that high, we need to look at it. We're not going to come at you for, we're not Illinois pensions. We're just trying to make the contract language reasonable. That's all. How about we leave this way? If we can't, to make this expedient, do we want to vote on what Mike's proposal is at this point without a cap and see what we come out at? If we come out at 2-2, then we'll have to leave it to the town board. If we come out, because I don't know that Rick's on. Is Rick, if you're on?
He is
He's
here.
on. He's on.
Okay. Rick, if you can unmute yourself so you can join. Oh, there you are. Can you unmute? It's up in the corner there, it should be a little box that says mute, and you click it. See if you can find it. If you roam around with your mouse and get up in a corner somewhere on your screen, there should be a little box that says unmute.
You can unmute him too, Chad.
I think.
No, it says here I asked to unmute. I've been clicking it. He has to unmute himself.
Hey, John, make sure he realizes
I got it.
There you go.
There he goes. There
Okay.
he is. Thanks, Mayor.
So you
All right,
did,
Mr. Rick.
huh?
If you've heard all this, if you want to weigh in, we've got 5 of us on the committee. We've got,
Yeah.
I hope you heard some of the bios and all, but Tom Yemp, myself representing the fire department, John Coker and Mike Johnstone representing the town, and you are the independent person at this point. So we're just not going to, I don't know if you heard all the discussion on the escalator clause. That's where we're at right now. I'm trying to, just to make this thing move along, I was thinking maybe we should vote on things as we move through so that we don't have to revisit each item.
What is your position on this? I would like to know, because I probably didn't hear all of what I was a little late getting in.
My position is that I'm fine with, we proposed an escalation clause with a fixed percentage of 3% a year.
Right.
That matches what the employee raises have been over the last decade or so, and it also matches the escalator clause on the Duneland Beach and Michiana Shores police contracts that was written into their contracts. So I just thought it was a somewhat reasonable escalation clause to ask for. We have not had an escalation clause on this contract in prior years. So it's a new item, and John Coker has some concerns about capping it. Mike Johnstone has proposed a scientific rolling average sort of a thing with a 5-year span so that, we keep it at a reasonable point. So right now, I'd like to just vote on some of these things as we march through this rather than revisiting each issue. So I was going to propose that we vote on whether or not we want to have an escalation clause, and then, if it's going to cap at 3 year, we use Mike's proposal. I'm in favor of Mike's proposal. That's absolutely fine for me, the 5-year average.
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Basically the town pays the fire department's expenses. So why do we even worry about this? Just, if you need, $6,000 for maintenance of equipment, send the town a bill for $6,000 and they pay it. I mean, why even bother with this?
Bother with what, John?
But with your budget, the town's paying for it anyway. I mean, why mess with the budget? I mean,
Those budget numbers are based on averages in the past. And so I guess the thing is I don't want to have to do a brand new budget every single year. Obviously, the point of the inflation is prices increase. So then we don't have to redo some items that maybe we typically purchase and recalculate it based on what we expect it to. It's just kind of an increase in, overall cost of living. So I mean, that's kind of the way I take it.
Yeah, I think that's a good way. That's for, well, somebody going to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we include an escalation clause that matches Mike Johnstone's definition, which includes a 5-year rolling average to adjust it, and we'll review it every year as Mike proposes.
I second.
I'm in favor.
Okay, so all in favor, raise your hand so we can see you. That's Tom, myself, Rick. John, did you raise? Oh, John's good. And then I can't see Mike.
I'm sorry. Yeah, my hand's up.
Oh, Mike's hand's up. Okay, good. All right, so we're done with that then. Let's move on to the capital expenditures. So what we've done in the past, just to get everybody up to speed, when we proposed the contract 10 years ago, we included what's called Exhibit A. I can pull that up for you if you'd like real quick. Give me 1 second. So what Exhibit A is essentially it's a review of our major capital equipment. We have an engine 1, we have an engine 2, and we have a Rescue 3, which is an old Suburban. So what we've done here is we've updated this on this new contract. For everybody's benefit, the old contract was negotiated back in 2011, so it's 10 years old now. So we haven't asked for Pete Byvotes asked me a year ago or a year and a half or so ago when I first took the chief's position to come up with a new contract, and shame on me, it's taken us this long to come up with it to propose to the town. But at any rate, we revised this now with a new proposal, but the old contract that was negotiated in 2011 had this very same exhibit with older numbers. So what we've done is we proposed, the first thing on there is buildings. We'll talk about that a little bit later. Right now we're talking about equipment. So, each engine has a purchase date, so to speak. Right now, the oldest truck, as you can see here, old engine 1 is 32 years old in 2022. The NFPA, which is our regulatory body, it's a little bit like an OSHA sort of a thing for the fire service, recommends that trucks, not be older than 25 years old. So what we did was we went out on the marketplace. We go to the fire trade shows, we happen to be fortunate that the largest trade show in the whole country is in Indianapolis every year. So we go down there and review the truck equipment, and we've had some vendors in. We've knocked some numbers around. So what we're trying to do now for everybody is give you an idea of a maximum budget that we need to think about for replacing that truck. We also wanted to present, for the future, which I think the town needs to do in general. We've had discussion about this before, other pieces of equipment that might need to be replaced in the future. So for instance, our SCBA's, although, there are some potential for grants on that item, as well as the trucks potentially, but Rescue 3, that's a smaller truck. I think we put a $75,000 to $90,000 number on that. We may very well get a truck in for closer to that $650,000, but I don't think it'll be much less than $500,000. That's the going rate for these things if you pay any attention. So we wanted to give you a not to exceed number so that we could talk about this budget. And
Is it going to be like a hook and ladder truck or just a regular fire truck? Or what kind of fire truck is it?
It's what we have today, John. It's pumper trucks. That's the going rate for a pumper. And if you build a pumper new, it takes about a year to build. So you commit to it, and it's 365 days before you get delivery on a new truck.
I know. Bought a few.
John, are we getting dinged on this at all since we're 7 years over the limit?
Nothing is ever said really. I think probably Willoughby could speak to it more than I could. I mean, I would imagine at some point if one of these, I'll tell you, just to give you an example, Rick, to answer that question in a more practical manner. We've had things like the last old truck we had that was long of tooth. We were driving up a hill and the drive shaft dropped out. We had one night where one of the fittings on top of the pump blew right off the top of the pump. So what happens when you're this old? It's not so much that they get that much use. Obviously we don't have a tremendous number of fires, but the risk is that in the middle of a fire, one of these things is going to develop one of those kinds of problems. So that's why they recommend the 25-year time frame. We've done I think, a fantastic job of maintaining these vehicles with the town's help. So, we don't consider ourselves to be in major danger, but I suppose if something were to happen and somebody got hurt in a fire or, God forbid somebody got killed, somebody would start poring over these records and they say, what the hell were you people doing? So I think your question is legitimate. There probably are some ramifications potentially. I would hope not, but again, the NFPA makes
look at our ISO rating, John. I don't know if the ISO questions, are they going to look at the NFPA lifespan of our trucks and the ISO interviews we do every few years?
Excuse me, can I jump in here, Bart DeLabar?
Yeah.
I used to work for ISO. In fact, that's where I retired from. Addressing Rick and Tom's comments, ISO, when they rate the community, does look at the equipment and they do follow the NFPA standards. Now, whether that changes the ISO rating for Long Beach, it probably does not. But if the vehicles that we have or the apparatus we have are not in compliance with FPA, they do subtract points for that.
Is that going to get us into a different category?
Probably not. It's going to get us closer to the threshold for going to a less, going to a worse category, but it will not, unless we're right on the border to begin with, It will not put us in a worse category, no. But it does affect the overall town rating.
Well, thanks. I think that one thing that concerns me is I think we have one or two of our firefighters that know how to use a stick shift fire truck. Thanks, Megan. I'm not sure that it's right. It's 7 years old. I'm not saying that we have a methodology to buy one, but I think that if you don't even ask or put it in the budget, it doesn't speak highly of our care, custody, and control of our fire people. And I know that you can find a nice a used truck, and so I would be for upgrading that truck. That's my personal opinion.
As an aside, and John, I'm just going to bring up in our conversation that we had at Budget and Finance on capital expenditures for the town. And I think that the thing that people on the call today don't have the benefit of, that one of the things that was discussed is putting together a 5-year plan for capital expenditures for the town, which would include fire engines, for example. And one of the reasons why we talked about it was, as we look at our cash positions and all of our funds, and we're looking at what our expenditures are, there isn't really a plan out there that says, here's what we need and over a period of time. And it's the kind of thing that we would probably update annually. And I think mid-year is a good time to do it. And we talked about having that completed by June. And so as it relates to this discussion, I think that, and one other issue, which is one that I brought up at the Advisory Planning Commission, was let's take the clause out of the proposed contract relating to capital expenditures for the time being and address it as a separate issue, which I think it's important to do. And that way we can move forward. I think we move forward with the contract for fire protection and then have serious discussions about, again, is it a used truck? What's the total expenditures? There's the firehouse issue involved here. We're talking about potentially a sizable amount of money. And but I think the important thing is that we look at it globally as to what are all the capital expenditures in front of us for the town, and meet regularly on this thing and come to some decisions about it. But I think it's going to be really hard for us to commit to saying, all right, we're gonna jump on and commit to, again, that Schedule A is, I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but somewhere in the area of not just the equipment, but also the firehouse, $1.5 million to $2 million. It's a big number.
Yeah, there's no question it's a big number, and I follow your logic, Mike. I think when I looked at, Megan Applegate, who's an accountant by trade, did some projections for us. We plugged in those max numbers of $1 million on the station remodeling or a retrofit, and then the truck. Part of the motivation, just so everybody understands, of doing something with the station. If you've been over there, you're certainly welcome. We'll take you on a little tour. Tom can maybe speak to some of the things that have happened to us.
Looking at the trip over things.
In order to get a new truck, it's got to be, it's got to meet the new. So as far as getting a used truck, it's not like you can go out and get a 10-year-old truck. It has to meet the new standards, and that includes things like we're no longer allowed to hang off the back end of the truck with a strap around our shoulders. We're supposed to be inside. There are lots of new requirements for cancer-causing agents. So we have a lot of our firemen now fire people have chosen to put their gear at the station, which is a wise choice rather than carrying all that cancer stuff around in your car with you or leaving it in your home where your kids are involved. We put it in the station now. So a lot of our lives have been changed over the years relative to the way we do business. So that station is woefully inadequate as it sits. Now you buy a new truck and it's going to be really longer or larger than the one we're currently using. So there are lots of reasons why that station needs to be upgraded, to say nothing of the fact that it was built in the 70s and it's, the oldest building next to the school that's still in use by the town. But when you look at those annual expenditures, Mike, just for, those are big numbers, $1,750,000. We when we were looking at this very seriously over the last decade or so, we talked to a contractor, a design build contractor. That number of $1 million again is more than enough money. I think we could probably bring it in. He had an $800,000 number that we were knocking around with, which was also, not to exceed sort of a thing. But even if you use $1 million for the station and amortize it over 20 years, and you use $750,000 for the truck, which I think is a strong projection over 10 years, you're looking at about $140,000 a year in expenditures on that, with the rates at what they are now. And again, I look at that as that's about a 6.5% of the town's budget. So we're still not talking about huge dollars relative to what the town expends in total. So I just want to give some perspective then when we talk about affordability and then capital projections and those sorts of things. We're not talking about huge dollars. I mean, we popped for that loader this year for $90,000. We popped for, a couple of squad cars for about $90,000 this year. So those kinds of dollars sound scary, but when you put them out on an amortization schedule, they're not huge dollars when you're cranking a 2.2 annual budget. So I agree with you. I don't have a problem. I think we can sit still if we want to get serious about a capital program for the town. But I also want you to realize, and I think you understood that after my frustration at our last meeting, that this is not something that has not been talked about. I mean, that schedule was in the contract, and truthfully, I don't want to go down that road, but truthfully, the town's been you could almost say that you guys have been in default over not doing anything, not you particularly, but the town itself has basically been in default for the last 10 years because, we requested the town to do something about this a decade ago, and we sit here again 10 years later with absolutely no progress. Now, I don't expect you guys to make that all happen this year, but you understand why we're a little reluctant to say, okay, guys, we're going to shake hands on this 38 and we're going to let you just go back to school and forget about the rest of it. So if we can get some sort of a commitment out of the town, and I don't expect the fire commission to be the ultimate authority, but I would really love to have the town make some kind of a timely commitment about getting this put together. And, I know you're in favor of taking the clause out of the contract. I am not, because I want to hold the town's feet to the fire.
John, how many years have we been working on this thing? At least I know.
Well, we got the quote from Chester on the station remodeling, which was kind of a hard number. We could have pulled the trigger there. In fact, believe it or not, the town council, the prior administration authorized us to proceed on a $10,000 down payment because we needed to do it quickly. We gave the company Chester Incorporated $2,000 of our fire department dollars so that we could keep them on board. And then when we met with the fire commission, John Coker and we all discussed, we decided we wanted to get another number rather than just going with one design build firm. So we kind of backed out of the Chester program during the prior administration and decided to try to get some new numbers. We've been in contact with Larson Danielson. They've actually given us the information to go with another design build concept, which is what typically is done. Like they've done that for a lot of other municipalities. So we've been talking about this for over 10 years, and we've been talking about it seriously for 3 or 4 or 5 years. And, we actually did get some proposals on fire trucks as well. But so I know John worries about hard numbers. The problem is it takes we're all volunteers. It takes a tremendous amount of effort to tighten these numbers down and screw them down.
John, why can't we get a committee or something and focus just on that, just like Mike said, just on that, on the building and on the truck, and get a plan together. So we're not going to kick it down the road again, let some other council take care of it, and we still got an old building falling down. You can't even get the trucks in there. I've been in there. You can't even walk around the trucks hardly, it's so small. I mean, it's obviously we need some improvements, but.
John, how many times have we gotten a group together and have worked with the town council and had everybody thought that we were going to go ahead on it, and something always happens and we don't. And so we're going to do that again and again and again. And in the meantime,
I would suggest we have a definite plan with some time frames that we follow, the town council approves, and we go forward, if that's what the council decides they want to do. But we got to do something. And I agree, just talking about it's not going to get it done.
I mean, it's like we can't buy a new pumper because it won't fit in that garage. And so we're not going to get that. Your ISO rating is terribly important. I don't think we should be jerking around with that, because the insurance companies are watching that ISO for everybody's benefit. And I just think that, I mean, I agree exactly with what you've said, but I've been there probably as long as anybody has been on this commission. And it just makes me upset that we don't, we have a very good fire department. We have an extremely good fire department with a very good ISO record. Now, as everything changes, and you know that our population is aging. And so if you look at the fire calls versus the calls for people, medical calls keep increasing, which we do a wonderful job with that. And so we don't want to have any fires, actually, and we try to do education on everything that we can do. We put in a lot of effort, and it just, for the taxation that we're going to incur over several years, it just always upsets me that they only appreciate the fire department when something happens. When somebody dies, when somebody does something. And I just hope that we can go through this thing one more time, John, and get it done.
Can I make a couple comments?
contractual middle ground that we could get to where, you keep it in the contract as an acknowledgement that, yes, the town council is responsible for this and is looking at it, and then put something that says, and it will be addressed in the 5-year capital budget plan. But I think we want to keep it in the contract. And if there's a process to get it, maybe we document it in this contract. But I'm just trying to find a middle ground contractually here. I don't know, Chris, maybe you've got some ideas on how to do that to satisfy both parties here.
Bob LeMay wanted to say a couple of things before we jump into Chris. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I heard somebody mention that we should have a committee look at this. I think we've been down that road before. And actually, this committee right now is the fire commission along with every member of the town council. So this committee is the committee that.
Let's make a plan and go forward with it.
That's what I think we need to do as this committee. We've got 2 more meetings scheduled monthly. I think we need to address these things. I think, we need to keep in mind that, these firemen are doing this for free. Over the years, I've heard people say, oh, let's just contract with Michigan City. Well, you know what? Those firemen all make money. They all take home pretty good salaries. I don't know how much they make, but I think it's reasonable. And frankly, Michigan City doesn't want us. I spoke with both the former and the present chief of Michigan City's fire department, and they both said, we're really not interested. And frankly, if our mayor decided we were interested, it would cost you guys more than you care to spend. We had Duneland Beach turn us down because we wanted to charge them more, or we wanted to charge them the same as what we are charging our households for fire protection. And they were able to go to Michiana Shores and get it for less than we wanted. That's not going to happen if we have to go to Michigan City, and we certainly can't go to Michiana Shores. There's no way their volunteer fire department could take care of us. I don't think we have a lot of choices. And frankly, I think we have a wonderful fire department who gives us great service. The other issue as far as this equipment, particularly the pumper and the trucks, is right now we're at huge liability. If one of our firemen gets hurt because of our old equipment, it could bankrupt the town. So I'm not sure we can really afford to not address this issue. And finally, the ISO ratings, it certainly is not a good thing to have your ISO rating go down. And frankly, even if your ISO rating doesn't go down, if your truck, drops a transmission on the way to my house when it's burning, that's not good. So those are my comments.
John, just to comment on your doc on your. I think we were all there together, and I think that we were there because there was all kinds of rumors floating around that the city of Michigan City was actually interested in taking over our firehouse, which, as you know, Randy Novak said, almost laughed in our face. He goes, "You're a better fire." From their side of the fence, why would this community ever want to be partnered with the city? Were we slower? Our people make an unbelievable amount of money. They're in a union, and you guys are doing a great job. I would like to be you, and you don't want to like to be us. And so I think that, Doc, I'm right with you.
Well, and in fact, Rick, when I did talk to I think the present fire chief, he told me that in his opinion, if we went to the mayor with this proposal, there's one way we'd get it done, and that would for us to be merged with Michigan City. So we would be part of Michigan City if we want to do this. And he said that's the only way this could possibly happen. And the other issue too is their equipment is too big for our little streets. They can't get to a lot of our properties.
Well, I know Novak said they'd have to build another firehouse, and so, and the last mayor and the mayor before that, they've never entertained that, and that rumor was probably spread by somebody in Long Beach. I don't know, but it's not true.
Well, I'll give you one more thing to chew on in terms of this, and then we can leave this subject as far as whether there's an alternative to the Long Beach Volunteer Fire Department. People talk about, Michiana. The only way Michiana can survive with their current situation, no different than us, is with a sister department like ours right next door. If we folded up our tent and walked away, there is absolutely no way that Michiana can provide service that they're capable of doing today. They would have to get mutual aid from either New Buffalo Township or Springfield Township, which, as anybody that knows the geography around here, you're tacking on 10 or 15 minutes at a minimum for them to get anywhere close to the fire service coverage area that Michiana does now. That would be a ridiculous thing to think about doing. So I think everybody would be in agreement, unless somebody else wants to beat this dead horse. I think the viability of the department is important to the town, and I pretty much think everybody's in agreement with that. So I don't know that we need to.
I think I want to see to go forward with this and not kick it around any longer and anymore is get whatever the plan is, put it together, how much it's going to cost, and then figure out how we're going to pay for it. And let's go and let's do it and let's do something. I mean, we can talk about this forever and it'll never get built. The equipment will fall apart. I mean.
All right. Well, so can we, so what's your proposal, John? I mean, here's the problem, just like you say, we've stewed on it for an awful long time, and you know where I stand. We need a commitment by the town board that's got some beef and hair and teeth in it. We can't afford it. Thing just can't fly anymore. I mean, we have got to figure out a way to afford it. I know you guys think that these dollars are huge and it's a little spooky, but again, we're only talking about, even if you take the annual expenditures and the 6% for the 140,000 for the annual expenditure, using my big numbers, you're looking at 10% of the town budget. And I think we're not going to need that much. We're going to be able to bring it in lower than that $1 million on the station and the $750 on the truck. So we need, you talk about taking it out of the contract. I don't know that does us any good. I mean, the idea with the contract is to get the commitment. Again, I mean, we could declare you guys in breach of the prior contract at this point. I don't want to go there, but we talked it over with the fire officers. If we can't get some kind of a commitment out of the town, that's our next step. We'll fold the tent up, let you guys go out and go on the street and figure out another way to do it. But we need a solid commitment to make this work.
So theoretically, Mr. Johnstone, and he's probably not wrong in terms of the capital. I understand both sides. They both make sense to me. But if it's a sticking point, does it help to take it out because it is a peer services contract? And so that is his sticking point on this, is it doesn't belong on that fact. It's something that's relevant. The fire department, to me, has a safety net in that if they don't supply what you need and there isn't, then there's an out, right? You opt out, and you can opt out every year, depending on wherever we get to. Does it help if the town council gives the fire department a resolution as consideration into and recognizing as an inducement into the service contract? It shows a public support and puts it out there by the council that says we have a resolution that we are going to put a capital plan together and move it forward.
Here's the problem, Chris. We're not talking about a let's sweep the office service contract here. This is a whole different animal. I understand what you're saying in terms of a service contract, but we can't do our work without. Why don't you speak to what LeMay's talking about? Let's say somebody gets hurt on one of our fire scenes, or God forbid, we can't get to a kid in the top floor because truck number 1 winds up breaking down on the way to the scene. I wouldn't want to be in that courtroom when that goes down. I mean, some of these things are very serious. We're not talking about a contract with XYZ Sweeping to take care of the air conditioner. I mean,
I'm certainly not simplifying any of those issues and the ramifications. What you guys do, right, are no different than what the police department does, and having good equipment and reliable things, and having that to be the least of your worries, that you have to worry about whether you can make it up a hill or to a call, right? So that part of it.
So we're really not happy with, and this is back to the group of 5 of us, and we can vote on it, but I'm not happy pulling it out of the contract. I really don't want to do that. I don't see the need to. We've not pushed this issue any harder in the last 10 years than we plan to push it in the front, what we're looking at for the future. But I'm with John Coker. This has got to happen, and it's got to happen soon. So just to raise our hands and say we can't afford it again and sign a contract without any commitment again, I'm just not happy with that.
But is the town, and I'm just putting it out, if that provision stays in there, is it really saying anything? What's it say to you? Because there's an out. If the town council determines can't afford it, they're out. So what does that provision really do? I know you're looking for a commitment, and absolutely, that makes sense to me. We've talked about it's been decades, right? But that provision,
long time.
and that provision of what does it really do, it makes everybody feel better, in my legal opinion, because the town council always has an out. Can't afford it. It's not in the budget.
So what if the out is still there, why do we pull it out? Why do we pull it out then, Chris? I don't get it. What's the point of
that's what I'm throwing that out there for you guys. You're the decision makers. I could be happy leaving it in either way. I don't think does it belong in there in terms of being a service contract? Not necessarily. And that makes sense to me. If it stays in there as it's window dressing and an inducement that gives you guys, as the fire department, the comfort that the town is committed. I understand. You guys as decision makers have to decide what it means in terms of the importance, because from a legal aspect, the town has an out, so it doesn't mean anything to me. It's a sign of commitment is what it means to me.
To pull it out because we say we can't afford it is what scares the crap out of us, because that's what we've heard for probably my whole term on this department.
Well, no, I'm not saying that, but they could say that anyway based on the terms.
I understand the legalities, Chris, but what I'm trying to get at is every 4 years we have to do this same sales job to new individuals. We're doing it again. And what I'm trying to tell the new individuals is it's time to make it happen. John Coker's of that opinion, and I agree with him. But without some sort of a written commitment, we're back where we were 10 years ago.
I agree. I agree 100% with you, John. Why don't you make a motion to this? Because I think this community cannot afford to lose this fire department. Neither can Dunlin. We go, the whole bunch is going to go. And you talked about a fire. Somebody gets hurt on a fire call. What happens if you know what time it takes to get an ambulance out here? What happens if somebody's got a heart attack and we have to take care of them before our unit even gets here? Yeah, and this guy died just because it took 12 and a half minutes to get there. There's things like that, and we are an aging population out here. I know we got a lot of people coming in new, but the new doesn't. It's something that we figured out a couple of times before, and we've showed them every kind of tool you can imagine to do it on an economic basis. And so I'm with you, John. I mean, it's time to shit or get off the pot.
Just one final comment on this paragraph. And it isn't just the issue of separating it as a separate issue. I'm not comfortable with the language. I'm not comfortable with how it was written. In some pieces, it says where the town is obligated, and there's some where it says if you don't have the budget, it's very loose. And we, quite frankly, don't even know how this expenditure compares to expenditures we have to make on behalf of the town separate and apart from this. So I can't consciously vote for this contract with the language that's in that contract today speaking to capital expenditures. I can't support it.
So what's your alternative, Mike?
Then we have 3 meetings we're going to be doing this on. I'm saying we sit down, this is a separate issue, and we work out the language that speaks to the capital needs of the fire department. That's all I'm saying. And the advantage of that is then we've got the fire protection agreement separate and apart from that, executed and done and signed. And now there's a contract with an escalation clause in it, covering inflationary costs. and we sit down as a group and we seriously address the capital expenditures, not only for the fire department, but for the entire town. And I just came out of that budget and finance meeting, and I didn't have a comfort level as to where we are in terms of how things are stepping up and what our obligations are as a town. I wasn't comfortable. And it was my first meeting, budget and finance. So it could be some of that in there too. But I think the comments that Carl Cinder made were very valid. I think we need to put some science to this. It doesn't have to take forever. And I support John Coker's comment. Let's get going. Let's examine this. Let's make a decision about it. But I don't like I don't like the language in that paragraph.
I don't see what the problem be is get the fire contract signed, agreed to. It sounds like we more or less agreed just about everything in it anyway, but for the capital expenditure in it, have the meeting on that and get something put together that we can submit to the council that, okay, we're gonna go and this is how we're gonna build this fire station. This we're gonna get some bids on the truck and we're gonna go with it and do it. Not 5 years from now on a 5-year plan, but this is going to be one of the plans we're going to do in the next 18 months. And it can be done. We can get a building built in time by the time the fire truck gets built. But we got to make the decision to do it and how we're going to pay for it. And that's what we ought to be centering our attention on the next meeting, which is only 30 days away.
Question. Would the volunteer fire department consider a 3-year-old truck, which would probably save, I don't know, $400,000 over a new truck, still would be 12 or 13 years newer than our American LaFrance? And, or are we committed to going with a new truck?
Look, Bill, we're going to look at the marketplace and try to come up with as a reasonable plan as we can.
Okay, that's fine.
We did that the last time. We bought what do you call it?
Demo.
We bought a demo truck last time to save the town some money. We're going to be reasonable. We're going to be reasonable. And I told you originally, I don't think we're going to spend $1 million on the station, and I don't think we're going to spend $750 on the truck. But I wanted to scare people a little bit, and I wanted them to have a reasonable, outlook for financing. Mike knows this. You certainly don't budget for a low number. You budget for a high number, and then you try to come in below it. You know that, John. And that's what we're going to do. We're not going to try to, we're not interested in a Cadillac. We just want to get off of the Model A. So I think we seem to be reaching some sort of an agreement in terms of principle. How about if we leave the capital expenditures alone just for a couple of minutes? Blast through the rest of this stuff to get everybody comfortable. We haven't heard from Mary yet, and I know she's got some issues. My thought would be for right now, unless somebody else wants to make a motion to the contrary, let's leave the capital expenditures alone just for a few minutes and talk real quickly about the term and the amount and the accounting. And then maybe we can at least have a framework to sign something. Unless I hear somebody else doesn't want to do that, let's do that now. So the term of the contract, we wanted to have it be a perpetuity sort of a thing so that we don't, I do not want to have to go through this sales job every time an administration rolls over, and certainly not every year. That was the idea, in having an escalation clause built in. And as you know, we sat back and rode that old contract all the way till that pony was dead. So I think it's reasonable to talk about not having that term be any shorter than either in perpetuity or some sort of a decade-long contract. Because I don't want to revisit this whole thing of let's go get Michigan City, let's go get Michiana, all this crap every second year. So if we can make a commitment to a term or an in perpetuity contract, maybe Chris can speak to whether we need to word that differently, but that's what I prefer. So I'm willing to hear everybody else's thoughts on that.
My question is, can we enter into a contract that exceeds our term? Chris?
Yeah, that's generally the issue. And so maybe we can make it renewable automatically, but for notice, and that may be how it is now. Right, John? But I think we are going to have some limitations on making it something that lasts, and then we're hamstringing future administrations, which is obviously the theory behind that of not doing that.
Well, right now, the way the old one read and the way the new one reads, the way I read it is that we've got those safeguards built in. You've got that 1 year notice sort of a thing, and you also can get out of it for cause. So I think the way the contract sits, it basically is a follow-on contract. But if we need more,
maybe we just clean it up, right, and just make it clear that it's successive, automatic. They're annual, biannual, not to outlast the term. So what's current term? Is it 2 years left on?
3? Well,
3 years
2.5 or whatever you want to call it. But I don't want to have to revisit. I think it's got to have some language that says that the contract rolls over unless there's notice or, the town council. I want it to be a positive thing, not a negative, okay, we have to renegotiate every 4 years, because that's ridiculous.
I'm good with the way it's written right now.
No, can you stop with Alice?
Okay, then, unless anybody else speaks against that, and I know John just had to jump up. Mayor, I haven't heard from you yet. I don't know. I don't even see you anymore.
You can't see me?
There you are.
Yeah, I'm here.
When you haven't spoken, you're not on my front sheet here when I'm sharing. But anyway, so does anybody else have any thoughts about the term? Mike Johnstone just said that he thought it was okay as written. Does anybody else?
I'm okay with it, John.
Okay, so Chris, if you can peek at it and see if there's anything you don't like, but I think it gives us the latitude to each one of us can get out of it at any time, but it doesn't require us to negotiate it every 4 years. It doesn't require us to, not to say that somebody couldn't bring that up, I guess. So can we have a motion on that then?
So moved.
So just to repeat the motion, we're going to keep the language as it is unless Chris finds something wrong with it on the term.
Are we going to keep the part in there about the budget, that you submit the budget every year?
That's in the accounting area, Mayor. I'm trying to knock these out one at a time. Can you see the agenda here?
Oh, sure. Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to knock them out one at a time so we don't have to keep going around in circles. So the motion on the floor is that we keep the language in terms of term for the contract as it is in the contract. Need a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Good. Amount, does the 38 seem reasonable? I know, Mike, you had some questions about that. What we did was we went with a kind of a compilation budget for 2021 to give an idea of what we're thinking about. It's based on historical numbers. We were at 28,000 for the last 10 years. We lost the 5,000 from the Duneland contract 2 years ago, which we have not made ourselves whole for that. So if you took the 28 and put the 5,000 from Duneland that we no longer get on there, you're at 33. We wanted to, if you take a 3% roughly annual inflation rate on the 28, 10 years would have gotten you pretty close to 35. And as you know, I tacked on 10% just for condition's sake. So 38 was the proposed number. I don't know if anybody has any problem with that number.
I can live with 38.
Works for me, John.
Can we get a motion?
Move.
So moved.
38.
Okay. Amount of the contract is for 38. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, good. We're done with that one. Now, Mayor, we're down to accounting. So I know you had some issues relative to accounting, and we said we would be more than happy. Number one, we talked a little bit about the reporting that's currently underway, which means that people can get all of the expenditures for the department on those forms. I think Megan sent you some information about that.
She did. Yes, she sent Bill and I the forms.
So I know transparency was an issue over the years, but we feel like, at least in the last few years, we've tried to be, we've gotten over that hump, I thought.
The other thing that would help Bill and Deanna is if you had receipts and submitted them in a timely manner. It would be very helpful for them.
Receipts for
expenditures when you need to be reimbursed for things.
Well, I thought we did that on things that we asked Bill specifically for. In other words, when we did the compressor and the door, I thought didn't we get bills and receipts to you, Bill, on those?
Yes.
So I'm not sure, Mayor, where you're going with that.
Deanna, are you on here? Because we talked about that. And didn't the town also help pay for the new washer for the laundry?
I think the laundry was a grant that we got that ourselves.
I thought Bill told me
No.
Okay.
So are we okay on that one then? Or is there something else? So the new language is still objectionable, Mayor, or what's the scoop?
No, I just wanted the part from the old 10-year contract left in there that you submit a budget every year so that we see what's going on. And that's part of the transparency in case people ask me.
Okay, so we talked a little bit about this last time. So if we're talking about presenting a budget, I don't think we have a problem with that. The language that you were worried about, I thought, was that you wanted us to come to you with pre-action requests for funding for maintenance and those sorts of things. I think we got over that hump.
Okay, first of all, it wasn't me wanting you to come to me or the council. It said in the old contract, part of it was the budget. The number two part was if you wanted to have the fire station for any other function, you had to have the approval of the town council unless it was fire training or fire related. And you took that part out. And I don't know why you wouldn't. I mean, everybody else has.
I told you we'd leave that in, Mayor. Last meeting, we went over that hump. So let's
Okay.
stay on the things that we're still worried about.
Okay, John, I didn't know that. And take it down a notch. I'm not used to that. And the last thing was you took out the part that if you needed something done, that the fire commission recommends it to the town council. So that's what I was looking at.
Okay, so there were three things then we're talking about. We agreed we would give you a budget. We gave you one for 2021. We'll keep doing that.
Okay.
How we use the station, we went over that hump. I said we could put that back in. I don't understand why that's got anything to do with anything, but that's something that you're concerned about.
John, is it okay if I have an opinion, or do
anything other than fire?
You just want to rub me in the ground all the time? It's my opinion. It's there. I think you would want it anytime anybody else does anything like the St. Patrick's Day thing, they have to have approval from the council, okay?
St. Patrick's Day thing.
I'm talking about other things that go on in the town. They have to have approval. And that is town property.
So you're like saying like a approval for our ice cream social that we have every year? Or like I had Girl Scouts come to the station? Like, I guess there needs to be clarification because other than, fundraising and promotion and community events, I mean, there's nothing else going on in the fire station. So I guess I'm not sure what that means.
Then why was it in the original contract, Megan? It says in there if they want to do it for any other purpose.
I think because it doesn't make sense.
Or for instance, did people use it for birthday parties or whatever, retirement, and did they rent it out or get to use it when the community center perhaps wasn't what it is now?
Okay, so that's what you're talking about, like
so maybe it's something antiquated, right? She's talking about somebody that isn't fire related using it, right?
That's all I'm thinking. It's kind of a disclaimer. Yeah, it's a disclaimer. So, because that is the town's property, there is a liability. I don't have any problem with whatever the fire department does in there. They do wonderful training, they do a great fundraiser, and they keep the building up like it should be.
Yeah, I think I was just kind of confused on like the relevance of it, but I get what you're saying. If you guys want people at the community center, then obviously that's a different story.
Yeah.
I don't know of birthday parties or anything that's going on. I think the fundraising that we have for the ice cream social, I brought Girl Scouts down for they wanted to tour it and it was part of like Go Women thing. But I don't know of anything else, John, Larry, any of you guys step in that we do other than our typical fire meetings and trainings at the station.
It's not a really effective building to do much in, so.
No, that's all I'm looking at. So probably the Girl Scouts earned a badge too. Mike Shaponiak used to help me with that.
One of the things that's important about the fire station is much the same about the town garage is, and the flip side of anybody using it, the fire station should not be used for anything outside of things that are approved by the fire department. And that's because of the nature of the equipment that's in there. Some of it is extremely dangerous. Other pieces of equipment, there's pieces of equipment that are hung on trucks that if some kids or whatever pulled them off, it could break their neck. So, that needs to be addressed. If you're going to have openness, you need to make sure that it's not nobody can go on and approve something and say, oh yeah, you can use the fire station. Because that could cause everybody a lot of problems.
Yeah, and I think, again, maybe it's antiquated or you guys don't handle things the way that they were open or it was just thrown in. But for instance, Cool Spring Township, right? They open theirs up. But I've been to fundraisers there, Pop Warner, et cetera. Those are outside of what you're looking to do. So maybe you put that constraint in there at all, or that it requires. That, to me, not a significant issue. It's just clearing it up, right?
It's not significant. I just wanted it cleared up. The other thing is, I don't know of anything that they're doing. I'm not suspicious of any of that, but it's kind of, it's a liability in the town. It's all of our property. And so we want to make sure that we're careful about it.
Well, John, when we build the new fire station, you could put in a community room in there, shut off from the rest of the station so nobody can get to the equipment that the community could use for meetings or birthday parties or things like that. That's what Winnemac did when they built their station, and it's used a lot by the community, but there's no way they can get back into where the fire trucks are. And so, that's one thing. If when the station's designed, that's something you might want to think about.
Yeah, we're shoehorned in our meeting space pretty significantly now. The idea was when we did make this change that we would gain some space. So yeah, that would be a great asset for the town. Actually, we went over this language last time. We can leave it in there. That's not a big deal. Getting back to the ones that we're having some issues with, I think we're on agreement that we're going to do the budget for you, and then we're going to remove that language that talked about asking for permission for maintenance items. I thought we hammered that out last time, Mary.
My opinion, John, we talked about it and you gave us examples why you didn't want to do that, but I can't think of any time we would ever say no, ever. But I think it's a communication thing and keeping people involved and know what's going on.
Okay, well, back to my point originally, and again, we rehashed this last time. The language in the old contract would make somebody believe that the fire department had to present, before they did it, the items that were in that language. And I can pull it up right now if you want to see it, but essentially
no, I don't need to see it. I have it.
Yeah, it said that we were supposed to cut. So the idea with having a contract such as this with a fixed dollar amount is that we don't have to go for every little nickel dime thing and ask permission. We have a quarterly payment that comes in, and then we account for it, but we don't have to go ask for permission to spend those dollars. That's what the contract is set up as. So that old antiquated language about us coming to the town council or to the fire commission or both to get those things authorized before we spent money out of that soon to be $38,000 contract, that language doesn't make sense anymore. That's why we pulled it out. It's at cross purposes with the whole intent of having a fixed dollar contract.
That was the spirit of it when we negotiated it 10 years ago, John. I was involved in that. The town council wanted simplicity. They didn't want to have to be on the hook for approving all these things. If we had an understood budget, here's your amount to go do maintenance on the trucks. You guys are smart enough to take care of that. We don't need to worry about it. That's why they wanted to give us a single budget. It was simplicity. But if we got to make a purchase decision at 2 a.m. because something gone, we're going to be looking for immediate access to an answer from the town council, and I don't know how quickly the town council or the fire commission can act.
We have enough meetings already.
Yeah.
So I would entertain a motion
on the town council here with this particular, how we do the 38,000.
I would entertain a motion then for leaving the contract language as it is, with the exception of reintroducing the language that Mayor's worried about, how we're using the station, and then leave it as it's proposed then, with the exception that we're going to provide a budget every year, which I think that did get pulled out, but we can do that. We can reintroduce that language. So in essence, the 3 points that Mayor's bringing up, the one about how we use the station, we're going to leave in. The second one is that we're going to provide a budget annually that we will put back into the language. And the third one, which is going to stay out, meaning that we're not going to ask for permission for maintenance items.
So
We're talking about a budget to request money or a budget of what we spent the money on?
Just to propose, no, not, okay, first, okay, that's a great point, Meg. The accounting is on the 90, whatever you call it, right?
990.
Okay, so that already happens. So we don't need to have anything in this contract that says that because it's already happening, right? Okay, so we're just talking about presenting a budget for the 38 sometime before mid-year. Is that what we're talking about?
I guess I just want to clarify because I know it's going to be something that I'm going to have to work with Blake on. I just wanted to clarify, is it something in anticipation for next year or, I guess, or what we spent the money on? Or Mary Lou, what was your intent with that? Oh, you're muted.
You're muted, Mary.
Okay. What it said in there, and I don't have my contract in front of me, it said that you had to submit a budget every year on your expenditures. I believe that's what it said. I can go look if you want me to. Oh, wait a minute.
It's more so for me to clarify because is it a future budget or is it a past of what we spent it on? Because that's not a budget. That's a
no. I think it reads it's the budget for the year. Let me go get it. Hold on.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to confirm.
Megan, it'll be future years.
Okay.
So you'll be submitting a budget for 2022 when that comes around.
Yeah, and the 990 is going to work with that because it's going to help you show what you spent it on and justify if you ask for increases or whatever that is. So I think all of those mesh.
Yeah, there's a problem with the old language that Mary Lou wants to reintroduce. The old language talks about us providing a budget for review by the fire commission, and then the town acts on the budget and continues to make quarterly payments, but that they would adjust the budget, adjust the contract to that budget. That's why we remove that language. Again, you've got a fixed contract amount. Yeah. There's no reason for the town to have to review that 38,000 every year. So the idea was that language spoke to revising the next year's contract amount based on the expenditures for the prior year. We didn't want to get in that boat. The town didn't want to do that, and we didn't want to do that, but that language says that we were going to do that. So that's why we pulled it out.
Well, I'm reading, I went and got it's on page 2 of the old contract, and it says for subsequent years, departments shall submit an annual budget with a request for the following year's funding no later than June 1st. And it goes on.
Okay,
I would just leave it at, John, I would just leave it at submitting a budget and taking out that second part because we're agreeing to the contract right now. And so that's no longer relevant in my mind. But I think there should be a process where you're submitting a budget every year. And I think that's just good business.
Yeah, because that language, the way it is in the old contract, Mike, would presuppose that if we gave you a budget for 55,000, you'd have to look at it and decide about it.
I understand. But all I'm saying is you take that element out in terms of what its relationship to a contract, because we're dealing with that with the contract that we're discussing now. So the terms, everything we've talked about so far, that language isn't necessary any longer. But I think having something in there that says that there's a submission of a budget, I think is prudent.
That's fine. I just need to know if it was future or past. That's all.
Just future, Megan.
Perfect.
Future.
Okay. So Mary, you okay then?
Yes.
Okay, so we're not going to put the old language specifically back in. Chris can come up maybe, or Meg, or we can make a proposal that we say that we present a budget mid-year for the coming year.
Perfect.
Okay, so essentially that's that first sentence or so. Okay. All right, that takes care of accounting and reporting. Are there any other contract issues anybody wants to talk about? Otherwise, I want to blow through number 3.
John, do we need to vote on that last change, or are we all good?
I'm good.
we can make a motion if you want, Tom. Mary Lou. Okay, so the motion would be that rather than returning to the language that was in the prior contract, we will introduce a new sentence that says the town will present a budget for the coming year by mid-year. That would be the motion, I guess. That's new language then in the new contract.
I second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're done with that one. Okay, so let's blow through the last Roman numeral and then we can go back to capital expenditures if we want to keep beating that horse. The fire commission, we haven't been meeting on a regular basis, but everybody, the town council at least, committed to meeting on this. I forgot, is this the second or third Thursday? This is the second Thursday. So we've got 2 more meetings scheduled for April and May on the second Thursday. Just that's more for your benefit, Rick, and Tom's as well. But the town council committed to those meetings. So we're going to try to do whatever we need to do. So as far as meeting frequency, we'll just plan on that second Thursday going forward, if everybody's okay with that.
Every month.
Yeah.
Yeah, and 5 o'clock's okay, or we can change the time, I guess. Okay. So the next meeting then will be April.
Hopefully we can do it in person.
Oh,
That
nice.
would be sweet.
Yeah.
The next meeting will be
I got
April.
my second shot.
We're all vaccinated by then.
All of us old folks are all shotted up, so it's all you youngsters we have to worry about.
It's April 8th, John.
April 8th, yeah, thanks, Mayor. Okay, so the next meeting will be April 8th.
Okay.
As far as membership, unless somebody wants to make a motion to change it, it would be the members right now are Mike Johnstone, John Coker, myself, Tom Yemp, and Rick Luderbach. So unless somebody wants to change that, the 4 of us could oust Mr. Luderbach if we chose to, but I don't choose to do that, and I can entertain a motion, but I'd rather not.
Seems like a nice gentleman. I don't.
I like Rick.
Well, thank you.
All right, so we'll keep the membership as it is. It's 6:30, folks. Do we want to just put the capital expenditures on hold and hold the contract until the next meeting, or what's everybody's pleasure?
John, may I make a suggestion? If it's acceptable to everybody on the committee, I'd be willing to volunteer to sit down with Councilor Willoughby and work on language for addressing capital expenditures that can either go in this contract or be a separate contract, and have that completed by our next meeting.
And I was just going to throw out food for thought. So maybe this is something that, because there's a verbal commitment, you guys are out there, and maybe we have a capital contract as well that has some triggers.
That's suggesting, but I think the best thing, I'm willing to volunteer to do that if everybody accepts it. Sit down with Councilor Willoughby and hammer this thing out.
Can somebody to the next meeting, and maybe you guys have the expertise to do that, I think you probably do, to come up with some proposals as far as cost of a new station, cost of a new engine, and how we can finance it, so we have some hard numbers to look at too?
It's a good idea.
Well, I will tell you this, when you say hard numbers, we spent almost a year and a half with that prior contractor to get to that $800 and something thousand number. I'm not willing to do that again unless this council gives me a very, very firm commitment in writing that we're serious about this. And the same thing with the truck. We spent 3 years screwing around trying to get hard numbers on trucks. And it's a very labor intensive process. You have to meet with a half a dozen vendors, knock it down to 3, and then you have to get a whole lot of meetings with them to get numbers. This is not like going down to Joe Doak Chevy and picking up an Impala. It's a very intensive process to get hard numbers. That's why I want you guys to be thinking about budgets so that we can have a not to exceed number. We can tighten up, Megan, I hope if I didn't send it to all of you, I'll do it again. We have some projection sheets, and I know Mike's perfectly capable of coming up with amortization schedules. We can, if we just use a number that's a not to exceed, so we can budget for it, knowing we're going to come in under it, we can do that. But I'm not going through 2 or 3 more years worth of Mickey Mouse without a hard written commitment from the town.
No,
How
John, I
about
think
some
that-
not,
I
Go ahead,
was
Mike.
just going to say, John, I think that's a good idea. We don't have to have fine numbers on all the equipment, but I think if we could at least get an idea of what the annual impact would be based on the timing of what you think you need to replace these things. And it can be a range, right? The annual impact is this to this based on all the components, and just roll it out. I don't think it needs to be, you don't have to go out and start pricing engines. My opinion.
That's what we're giving you tonight. That's what the $1 million is on the station. That's what the 750 is on the truck. And the amortization schedules that Meg put together, I thought we gave you guys, but if we didn't, I'll send them to you right after the meeting.
I don't think I've seen them.
Okay, I'll send them to all of you.
I haven't seen them.
Okay. But
I
that's
think
what we came up
with. I've
just-
got 2 or 3 of them.
just for, I'll send it to all of you, but again, it's about a $140,000 annual on a 10-year extension of the 750 on the truck and a 20-year extension on the $1 million on the station. It's a $140,000 annual commitment, but we can massage those numbers any which way you want, but you need to be prepared for those kinds of dollars. That's why I say, John Coker, to get them harder than that it's just not worth it unless we're committed.
Understand, at least we know where we're going.
Right.
Yep.
Well, the good
I
thing
think
about
you guys
this-
spent about 12 grand before, right? Just on plans, preliminary plans. isn't
Well,
it?
the fire department's out of well over 10,000 in hard cash on the
Right.
last go around to try to make these numbers harder. And we're not doing that again without a written commitment.
well, and the good thing about this committee is we have the 5 decision makers who are going to make the ultimate decision. So if we come to an agreement and we have the 5 decision makers on board, we can get it done.
Great.
I would sure hope so. I think that the commitment, one way or another, it's such a positive thing for the community. I just think that we have to come with pretty much how are we going to pay for it for sure, and how much is it going to be close. I'm willing to do it one more time. I just hope everybody else is willing to as well, and come to a conclusion this time.
Sounds good. On that note, unless anybody has anything else, I think we can adjourn for the evening if I can.
So
Thanks for
moved.
the
somebody else.
discussion.
Make a motion.
Adios, amigos.
Adios.
Everybody.
See ya.
Yeah.
Thank you all.